It's hard to believe that winter is finally going to be making its presence known here in Northwest Missouri and Northeast Kansas in just a few short weeks. But we need to talk about some winter weather safety and also some changes in some watches, warnings, and advisories you will need to be aware of this upcoming winter season. And who better to explain that than my good friends at the National Weather Service office in Kansas City. Today we are joined by the warning coordinator meteorologist, Mr. John Kurtz. John, it is so good to have you today.
Yeah, it's great. It's great being here. I'm more than happy to talk with you. I'm looking forward to it.
So let's start off with these new changes that are going to be happening this year in terms of the, more specifically, the wind chills, correct?
Yes, we've done. The Weather Service has been working on a project for quite a while, and you're familiar with it, Vanessa, of hazard simplification. We have a lot of hazard products in the Weather Service, and we have a lot of cold weather products, and so we've consolidated those down. And primarily what that's done is it's simplified that suite of cold weather products. And I'm talking about like the old wind chill watch warning and advisories that we used to issue. And along with that, even the hard freeze watches and warnings, which are more for the shoulder seasons, fall and spring when we're coming out of winter time. But for the most part, basically what we're going to do is wind chill is not going to go away. We're still going to use the wind chill, which is basically a calculation of the temperature and the wind speed to kind of give you what it feels like temperature, as some people call it. But we're going to consolidate those products into what we call the extreme cold watch or warning or cold weather advisory. So like the old wind chill advisory would now be called a cold weather advisory. And for our region and for Northwest Missouri and Northeast Kansas, that's usually negative 15 degrees or less. So it doesn't matter now whether it's negative 15 degrees, the actual temperature, or negative 15 degrees wind chill, the product is the same. It's called the cold weather advisory. And then the same thing goes for an extreme cold watch or warning. We used to issue extreme cold warnings for negative 25 or less degrees for wind chill. Now it's just if it's negative 25 degrees, which is very rare around here, but we can get close in some parts of the region in the depths of winter. If it's negative 25 degrees, the temperature, or negative 25 degrees wind chill, the product is now called an extreme cold warning. So that's how we're going to consolidate those down. It removes a couple of products, makes it easier for folks to understand because you can get a little in the weeds with wind chill versus temperature. It's basically just telling you it's gonna be very cold. Bundle in layers, protect your exposed skin if you're outside for prolonged periods of time, and be careful out there.
So can you talk about the background of what brought these changes? Was it just too many of these products being issued, or was people getting confused of, how cold it was going to get versus to how actually cold it was outside? Explain more like the background into this project.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been going on for quite a while now. The decisions to make these changes were based on data collected during public and even partner engagements. That's what television meteorologists and even the emergency management community. A lot of social science research has gone into this as well. Again, trying to help the Weather Service kind of consolidate down a lot of these products. And we found that when it comes to cold weather, a lot of folks don't really pay attention to either its wind chill or temperature. They're like, what's the wind chill? And what it really comes down to is it really doesn't matter. We're just trying to get across that it's going to be dangerously cold. And, we need you to wear gloves, put on a stocking cap, protect your exposed skin if you're out there, if it's going to be really cold. Because frostbite can set in pretty fast. If you're talking negative 15, negative 25 degrees below freezing, frostbite can happen pretty quickly on fingers or on exposed skin within 15 to 20 minutes. And you can get, that's very serious for folks that are working outside or kids that are playing outside in the snow, if there's snow on the ground. So we're trying to consolidate that down and make it just easier for people to understand and make it easier for you all in the media realm to be able to communicate that. Again, trying to get out of the weeds and make it very clear and concise as to what we're trying to say. It's going to be cold. Make sure you protect yourself when you're outside. But a lot of work went into this, both within the Weather Service and with our partners, and even in the private sector, working with private meteorological companies to kind of consolidate this down. So this has been a couple of years in the making, and this is the first winter we're going to try it out.
Yeah, we haven't issued those types of watches and warnings yet, but it's only early December, so it's only going to be a matter of time before that button is going to be pressed. I remembered a couple of years ago, I believe it was in 2022, we saw some of the coldest temperatures, wind chills, probably in in our memory, correct?
Yeah, I believe it was 2022. It got even down here in the Kansas City area and south of KC. It got well into the -20s for wind chills. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of rare for us to issue an extreme cold warning or a wind chill warning as it used to be. Maybe once a year, we might pull that product out and have to issue it. The advisories are more common because you can get those wind chills in the negative teens. But yeah, I think 2022 was the last time it was really bitterly cold. And in January of last year, I believe we got pretty bitterly cold in the middle part of the month. So there's that stretch there for a while where we were barely getting above, I think, 20 degrees for a high for a couple days. So yeah, I mean, hopefully we haven't had to pull them out yet. Usually December is not our coldest month. It's usually that depths of January into February when we have the most likely time frame for these products to likely be issued.
And I know you touched base of frostbite. I mean, because it doesn't take much with the wind chill for frostbite to happen, but also we have to think about hypothermia and, our plants, pets, the pipes. I mean, I remember I was in Atlanta in 2022, and I remembered pipes bursted everywhere because in the South it doesn't get that cold, but doesn't take a lot for pipes to get burst in extreme cold temperatures.
Yeah, especially if you're going to get down pretty far below. Usually after you're below freezing for several days in a row, pipes are a concern. A lot of organizations use these products to, they usually have cooling or warming shelters open well beforehand. But these are definitely for those folks that are unhoused population, making sure they have a warm place to go because frostbite isn't a joke. And then the damage from burst pipes. I mean, luckily most parts of our area, a lot of folks have basements and their water lines are pretty far below ground. But even when it's that cold, I mean, I've heard of pipes freezing in the ground at that point if we get a 2 or 3 day stretch of well below freezing temperatures. So yeah, I mean, it's something I'm always aware of too, even my own house, making sure my outdoor spigots are taken care of and the hoses are removed from them. So cold weather can do a lot of damage too, unfortunately. So making sure that we're able to message that cleanly and carefully to the public is one thing we're really trying to gain from this. So.
And I know for me, I personally do this when I know we're going to get extreme cold. I just turned all my pipes like just a little bit, just so you can see a couple of drops. Now, I know people say, oh, that's too little. You'd be surprised. A few drops coming out of your faucets will come a long way in the long run, preventing those pipes from freezing.
It's a question we get here all the time from people. We get phone calls to the office asking if they should drip their faucets at night. And I've referred people when I lived in the southern part of the United States and we get these cold spells. Leaving your cabinet doors open underneath your sinks is a good idea too to keep the hot weather or keep the warm air circulating through there. But yeah, a little bit of moving water does wonders. So not going to put a big dent in your water bill. I know people worry about that too, and I do too. But as long as you've got a small little drip going, your pipes should be pretty well taken care of. But if we're getting in temperatures below zero, that's definitely even a little bit drip might not stop some things from freezing up, unfortunately. But it's winter time in the Midwest, as we were talking earlier. So all the hazards we got to deal with.
Yeah, and also our cars. We can't forget the cars. I mean, just a couple of minutes getting the car and the fluids going. That's a big thing for me, especially just to make sure the car even can start in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing I think people don't realize that, again, like the impacts of cold on a lot of things, automobiles and other machinery, it can do quite a bit of damage just from that. But yeah, letting your car warm up for about a minute or so. I think most modern cars I've read, only about a minute to warm up. And of course, if you're driving an older car like I do, sometimes you got to give another 2 or 3 minutes, let it settle in before you take off down the road, get everything warmed up.
Yeah, I have a 20-year-old Accord, so I definitely give that little guy a good 3 minutes before, because you need to let the fluids going, the oils going, the heater going, because some cars don't have that wonderful remote start that I wish.
I don't have remote start. I got to go out there and start it myself. So I feel you.
Yeah. So I mean, now that we're going into winter weather, obviously, this is different from severe weather season. Because the forecast can always change. One day we could be predicting snow. One day we could be predicting ice, all forms of winter weather. So I mean, for me personally, we always like to let people know, like, hey, there's a storm we're watching a few days in advance, just to give them the heads up, like, hey, this could impact your travel, this could impact your outdoor activities.
Yeah, and it's especially important to stay up to date on the forecast when you're moving towards when we're dealing with winter weather, because things can happen very quickly. In the Midwest, we don't get these clean snow systems usually that move through. It's usually a quick clipper system, as we call it, where maybe like 10 miles from you, you'll get a 2-inch swath of snow, and then where you're at, you get nothing. And I know it's frustrating. It's frustrating as a forecaster from our side. You know that, Vanessa. Like, we've struggled with that all the time, and then have to deal with, have to answer to the public, which is part of our job too. And winter's tough on meteorologists, especially in the Midwest. And so we remind folks to at least continue to check on that forecast. Watch the news every morning when you wake up and see what the latest forecast is. Because what you heard the night before, or maybe the day before, or 2 days before, may be different by the time the event gets here. And I know we have to say that every year, but I think it's good to remind folks that is all the advances that we've made in forecasting, there's still little nuanced things that can happen that change the track of a low or change the amount of moisture in the atmosphere. And that can play big impacts on how much snow we get with a system when it comes through. And similar to that event just recently, the day Saturday after Thanksgiving, that swath of snow through the KC Metro that was 3 to 4, with some places getting close to 5 inches, almost 5.5, I believe. I saw a report near Higginsville, Missouri. That swath of snow is only about 15 miles wide, and on either end of it, there was very little, if anything. So an inch at the airport at KCI, and then you go 7 miles south and you're in 3 inches of snow, and it's a totally different world. And so those are the kind of things we battle with these little systems that move through, especially early in the winter. So yeah, definitely want to remind folks to check on that forecast. And also, if you are encountering snow or you're traveling, take your time, drive slow down. I feel like the first snow of the year is always the worst on commuters and drivers, because you're just not used to it, how slick the road is. Been driving on dry pavement for a while, and now all of a sudden you got some ice. It gets real messy real fast.
And I always tell my viewers, it's not snow that I worry about, it's ice that I worry about. I still remember the horror stories from, I think it was 2007, when that big ice storm moved through the Midwest. Now, I was here in Kirksville for the 2017 ice storm, and that was like my first encounter with ice, and that was like my reality check. It's not snow you should worry about, it's ice you need to worry about. And I know that's something we never want to talk about, is freezing rain and ice.
Freezing rain, freezing drizzle. Freezing drizzle is extremely difficult to forecast. We try to nail it as best we can. A lot of times we're not going to see it till it's almost happening. Because if you try forecasting drizzle, and like, drizzle is not the easiest thing to forecast, but yeah, ice is always the worst. At that point, it doesn't matter whether you have 4-wheel drive or 2-wheel drive, no one's got traction. So you're basically stuck. And I remember that I've heard stories from 2007. I was up in the northern plains during that time in my career. But I remember that event just from family and friends that lived down here. And yeah, I mean, I believe it was from Springfield all the way to Kansas City. I mean, everything was just coated in like a half-inch of ice. And it'll shut down a city pretty fast. I hate when we got freezing rain chances coming in. And it makes it tough on the road crews too. It makes it hard on MoDOT and KDOT to treat for that. So there's a lot that goes into taking care of the roads, and things that we learn as meteorologists from MoDOT and KDOT about how they approach the forecast, how they approach treating the roads. If it rains before it snows, you can't pre-treat a road, because you're just going to wash the treatment right off the road. Or if you have a wet snow and you pre-treat it and then that snow melts at first on the road, then you're washing the treatment off. So I know they catch it just like we do when people are like, why didn't they do anything? Well, a lot of times they can't do anything, because if it's raining first or if the snow melts, the treatment's not going to be effective at that point. And then they're just trying to play catch up and plow, put down salt and sand, whatever they can do to get traction on the road. So, but I like to remind the public that we work really closely with the DOTs and making sure that they have the most up-to-date forecast as well. And we try to brief them every day leading up to events, sometimes multiple times a day, to make sure they're prepared as well, so we can respond to these systems as they move through the region.
And of course, we always try to tell viewers, if you don't need to travel during a winter storm, just don't. Stay home. Just make sure you have enough food, water. But if you do need to travel, make sure you have that emergency kit in your car.
Yeah, absolutely. We like to remind folks when we talk to people about winter safety, making sure you have some water in your car. Maybe, I mean, even in the Midwest, not like, I mean, this is probably a lot of folks talk about it out in the mountain areas, and this is more important, but even out here, it's important to have a couple of granola bars, something to eat, because you might get stranded on the highway. I mean, we've had it happen where I-70 gets shut down or I-29, and people are stuck for 8, 9 hours waiting for the highway to reopen after some heavy snow. So especially if you're taking a long trip this holiday season, heading out for Christmas or New Year's, or wherever you're celebrating, like making sure you have those supplies in your car: water, blankets, yeah, a little bit of food, jumper cables, flashlights, just anything you think you might need if you're going to be stuck in your car for a while. Hopefully, it never happens to you, but I've heard plenty of stories about folks, being more prepared and not having to deal with those after effects.
Is there anything else in terms of these changes that we just talked about with the wind chills and the frost and the freeze warnings, John, or winter weather safety that we have not gone over that you would like our viewers in Northwest Missouri and Northeast Kansas to be aware of?
I think for the most part we've covered everything, but I always like to remind folks, like, weather's always changing, and you may hear a forecast on Monday for an event on Thursday, and if you don't hear anything between Monday and Thursday, and you get to Thursday and the forecast was different, well, it's because there probably was a change somewhere there. So we're doing winter weather. Make sure you're checking that forecast every day, especially if you're going to be traveling, especially long distances. Watch them. Stay tuned to the local media in the morning. Make sure you're watching the news. Make sure you're checking your weather apps wherever you get your weather information. Just make sure you're staying up to date with the forecast through winter, because we don't want anyone to get caught off guard by any storm systems. We want to make sure people are most informed. So definitely staying weather aware, and then making sure you're prepared for this winter season is most important.
Yeah, we always tell our viewers to always keep it tuned to KQ2, always download our KQ2 weather app, for the latest weather information. But for you guys, is there a website people can go to for more information from the National Weather Service office in Kansas City?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we tell local media, KQ2 is important. Like, make sure you stay tuned to those folks that you trust most, like yourself and us. Like, make sure that you're keeping up with all that information. The information that you provide on your apps and the warning information comes from us, so you get it through the KQ2 app. And for us, if you're interested more in the Weather Service, we do have a webpage, weather.gov/KC is our webpage, or /Kansas City. And you'll find our webpage, and same forecast information is on that page as well. And we've got winter safety tips on there as well for the winter. So it's another great place and resource for everyone.
Well, thanks a lot, Jonathan. We appreciate you being with us today, and let's cross our fingers and hope for a good winter season, and hopefully it's not too hard on us, because severe weather season will be around the corner before we know it, and I know you and I will be talking again soon about that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's never a dull moment. Midwest weather always keeps us on our toes, so be spring before you know it, just like you said.
Awesome, John. Thank you so much, my friend.